Hi everyone, welcome back. Happy Labor Day weekend. I wanted to do a reading update today, talk about some books I'm reading or in the process of reading. So anyway, I guess let's just get started. So I think I mentioned last time I started in on The Power Broker by Robert Caro, and I didn't make a lot of progress this week on it. I don't know. I just I'll going slow, taking my time through it, I suppose. But from what I've read so far, it's fantastic. The introduction, just to give a little background, this is a Robert Moses, who was a city developer in New York City, was responsible for really transforming the city into a modern metropolis through the mid 20th century, from the 20s really into the 1960s. And the introduction is incredible by Robert Caro, where he provides the legacy of Robert Caro. Ultimately, he's a tragic figure who left behind some really unfortunate legacies for New York City, but at the same time, he was the most powerful person in New York City for a long, long time as well. And Carroll's fascination with power and how people use power, and it becomes like a drug, like an addiction. So the introduction really is incredible. Really should be studied, I think, as just for the way Carroll sets up the book. Got to the chapter on the childhood of Robert Moses and getting into the college years, but yeah, I want to pick up the pace a little bit on this one, so we'll see. So mention a few other books here. I picked this one up from the library. This is Scorched Earth: A Global History of World War II by Paul Thomas Chamberlain. This is a new book that came out this year in 2025, and this book is really my main focus right now, just because I find it's really well written. It's a really, I wouldn't call it a provocative thesis of the Second World War, but the book is challenging a lot of the narratives we have of the Second World War as this struggle between fascism and democracy. And the Chamberlain's really looking at it as a struggle between empires, and viewing the conflict through that lens. Just to read just a little bit on the flap here. In Scorched Earth, historian Paul Thomas Chamberlain dispatches the myth of World War II as a good war. Instead, he depicts the conflict as it truly was, a massive battle beset by vicious racial atrocities fought between rival empires across huge stretches of Asia and Europe. So it's I think anyone who studies the Second World War closely will know that, of course, the Allies did really awful, morally repugnant things in order to defeat the Axis powers. That's there as well. But there is that framing I think we have in the West as, framing the war in these stark moral terms, between like a battle between good versus evil. I mean, I guess there's a danger there. I mean, I don't think the author I should mention is a professor of history at Columbia University. It's not an argument saying that it didn't matter who won the war. I mean, the author comes down on we were better off that the fascists were defeated, the Axis powers were defeated in World War II. But at the same time, we need to really think about how the Allies conducted themselves during the war, and raising a lot of moral questions there, instead of constantly framing the conflict as this struggle of democracy versus fascism. And it's just more complicated than that, and taking the global perspective really helps too. Like, the opening chapters has spent a lot of time on the war between Japan and China through the 1930s, and just how brutal that conflict was, with just unthinkable atrocities committed in this war. Also gets into the Italian imperialism under Mussolini with Ethiopia and his interest in, you know, gaining power in Africa, and just how brutal those struggles were. You know, the no difference at all between civilians and military personnel. Of course, the use of air power, cities, and we're just in the 1930s, really. And I think, you know, and I think anyone who looks at the 20th century, and you know, he's writing about how we think of the First World War ending with the Versailles Treaty, but in reality, it's almost as if the First World War never ended, because there were conflicts going on after there was peace in the Western Front. I mean, you had fighting in Eastern Europe going on. You had the Civil War in Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution, which was a cataclysmic civil war. You had colonial conflicts throughout the Middle East happening. So you just have these conflicts everywhere, and we're still in the 1930s yet, and there's just awful things happening everywhere. And I think now I'm up to 1939, 1940 with the start of the war on Europe. So yeah, I might actually write a review of this book once I finish it, and see, you know, the author is raising some really complicated questions, some moral questions of history, and I'm curious to see where he comes down on these things. So just a few more books I'll mention here. Let's see. I picked up Neuromancer by William Gibson. I want to read more cyberpunk science fiction. I know this book I had it years ago, but I don't think I read it. But this is a groundbreaking work on cyberpunk. So I do want to get a little bit more familiar and read that book. And I have a book here on, this is Oxford Classics of Horror Stories, Classic Tales from Hoffman to Hodgson. And this is a collection of short stories written, see what the time period covered here is, from 1816 to 1912. So we're getting into the horror story as it is starting to evolve. And the back of the book says, the modern horror story grew and developed across the 19th century, embracing categories as diverse as ghost stories, psychological, medical, and scientific horror, colonial horror, and tales of the uncanny and precognition. This anthology brings together 29 of the greatest horror stories of the period, looking at British, Irish, American, and European traditions. So there's a great list of authors in here. Some I know, some I don't know. Like, there's some famous names, like a story by Balzac, Edgar Allan Poe, of course. Story. Herman Melville has a story in here. Nathaniel Hawthorne. Yeah, like some of these stories are familiar. The first story, The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffman. I've read that story a few times, and that's a really interesting story about dream logic and childhood fears and trauma. I know that was a big influence on Sigmund Freud's theories. I think he specifically mentioned that story as when he's writing about childhood fears and anxiety. So The Sandman is really one of those primal stories about fear of monsters and things like that. So like I said, I'd like to get, maybe I'll talk, if I get through these stories, I'll get through and read and maybe talk about them a little bit more. You know, it's here in Ohio, it's been surprisingly chilly in late August, so it feels like fall came early, although it could easily heat up again. So kind of getting and thinking about these more horror themed books. I also started with Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which I've read before. I wanted to read it again. Have the Penguin edition here of Wuthering Heights, and look forward to reading that. So those are some books I've been reading right now. As far as some other things going on, I've been doing a lot of movie reviews over the past few months, and I guess more. I have my own reasons for doing it. I just wanted to try it, talk about movies a little bit on YouTube, and just to see how that goes. Talking about science fiction movies, and I guess I got into making a lot of videos over the summer on science fiction. But this week I had a comment. I wasn't sure whether to bring this up or not, but I had a comment in one of my videos that was really harsh. I mean, like, I was taken aback at how harsh the comment was. Now, I have people left comments that are kind of snarky, or you know, the typical, like, you mispronounced this word, or um, some kind of, yeah, whatever. But anyway, this comment really took it to another level, though, and I know that comes with YouTube, and I know many people get it far worse, but yeah, I mean, this comment, first of all, said, explain to me what a movie review should be. Okay, so I've been writing movie reviews since 2008, 2009, blogging movie reviews. I've written hundreds of them. I think I wrote movie reviews in high school. Oh, I did. So there's that. There was a very condescending piece where the commenter said, well, this is what a movie review should be, and this is how you should be in the future. And then went on to make fun of the number of likes that I had, and said, it's really pathetic that you don't have many likes on your videos, and you really need to take advice from me, because clearly people, are not liking what you're doing. So that was really nice to hear. Also, the person was angry because I wasted their time with a video I made on a fairly obscure movie, but was angry at me. You can stop a video anytime you want and move on. But anyway, oh yes, and then towards the end, after the commenter decided to explain to me what a movie review should be, they then started to address not me but the people, the audience, and said, stay away from his videos. He's terrible. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Avoid this channel entirely. So no longer addressing me, but I guess addressing the masses on YouTube after all this. And then even more, this I mean, this was funny. This made me laugh. The commenters made note of the books behind me here and said that I'm probably one of those guys who strategically places books to impress people. Okay, I strategically place books around just to impress people, and I'm probably one of those guys who doesn't even read the books I own. So that was funny. That was funny because, first of all, I would think, well, I live in a really small one-bedroom apartment, so I don't have a lot of space to put my books. And I figure, I do have a wall. The wall behind me is all shelf space, mostly, where I can put books, which is kind of rare for a one-bedroom apartment. So I do have books behind me. I've not read all of these books. I've read I've read a lot of them, clearly, but I don't have a lot of visitors come here. I'm not hosting cocktail parties or the Algonquin Round Table here. I'm not looking to impress people with my books. Like I said, and yeah. So I found that was really funny. I mean, the idea that I'm trying to impress people. I mean, books are pleasant to look at, and I figure they're behind me. But the idea that I'm trying to, establish myself as some authority on books just by doing that. So I have no one to impress, for the record, and that was just it was not pleasant to get that long screed written to start out your day with that. It was, like I said, I know a lot of people get far worse on the internet. I know you put content out there, videos out there, whatever, and you're going to get the negativity. I guess it's a little different when you can see, like, the commenter really really spent some time really deciding to rip into you, and I don't know, it's a strange feeling, I guess, to deal with that, but anyway, that's what happened, and I guess I think I'm doing okay. I hope so. I mean, there's always room for improvement to get better, of course. But like I said, it was really over the top. And anyway, that's that. I'll just leave it go at that. And yeah. So those are some books I'm reading right now, and hopefully this video wasn't too painful for you to watch, and hopefully I'll come back, and sometimes I like to write reviews. If I do, I might post some of my written reviews on here, or I'll just talk about them. I find that, I don't know if this is true of anybody, I find it easier to talk about fiction books, to review books of fiction and talk about them. Yet when it comes to nonfiction, I feel more comfortable writing about, if I'm reviewing a book, I feel more comfortable writing about nonfiction. So that's just me. I don't know if anyone's had that same experience, but anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.